The alter reality. Um, I am going to redo this one more time. I'm going to set it back to um, the beginning of it's gonna click in, or at least the music will click in. Um, at the beginning of the school year in 1996, so September 1996, and it will just run through in real time, and I mean everything. Music, writing, when I bought a record, if I read a book, anything that I can reconstruct will come through on this. I'm sending. I'm rebooting it to the beginning of. Um, well, technically, it's now February or the end of January 1996 in the ultra reality. Although I have nothing. um, the music starts, like I say, September '96. Um, I don't expect that I have really much of any writing until about 1998. Um, but there's other things that I'm gonna do as I build this document, um, and throw things in here as they come up. I can't say when. I don't know when I'm gonna actually launch it. Um, Certainly, I'm gonna get as much stuff as I can compiled before I even think about it. And there's a bunch of stuff I need to do with the website before I can get there, kind of thing as well. Um, but this is what I'm doing with that. Um, all my music's still up at Bandcamp, but I've actually shut my YouTube site down altogether. Um, I'm going to be wiping out my Facebook page altogether. In fact, I'm mostly going to be going quiet for a few months besides the ranting that I'm doing for the vlog. So the vlogging is going to be more or less um, the only um, communication I'll be doing. Well, besides, I'll be updating my music page as music comes out. I'm just going to be a while before that happens, but just because I got a lot of stuff to do before I get back to it. Um, but this is all has to coalesce. And then I'll get back to the music in sequence once I've got everything in place with this. Like I said, this is going to be pretty big in terms of scope. Um, like, there's a lot that I need to put in here, including, if I can, as much as I can, my actual webpage. And that's going to be interesting. How much of the webpage can I get up in real time that mimics, and can I correct some of it? I have no idea how I'm going to approach that. And it's going to be like I've got like 5 years before I have to worry about it. I should be done my music before I even look at that kind of thing, right? But right now, at the very least, I need to get everything up to the point that I'm at with the music, which is, like I say, early '98, and pull everything down that I can. So everything's gonna get wiped, everything's going away, everything's going quiet, because I want that kind of period of quiet before I come back. And when I do start posting again, it's gonna be from a different perspective of things. It's gonna be actually from that perspective um, of that period, and everything that happens will happen through there. This is kind of a mind fuck. It's gonna be a mind fuck. It has to be a mind fuck. That's the whole point of going through somebody's life 20 years ago on an internet platform. So imagine using Twitter in 1990. In fact, I'm probably going to open up a Twitter account just because I hate Twitter. I think it's completely stupid, but I think it's useful for this. Just the idea, but Twitter in 1996. And then moving forward, right? And like I say, it's all going to be staggered by 20 years. Um, and I mean, I picked 20 years because it's 20 years. It was like 17 and a half, and then it was like 18 and a bit, and now it's 8. Then it was 18 for a few days, and now I'm going to stick with 20, and I'm going to stick with 20. And I'm going to give myself lots of time to get everything I need, as comprehensive as I can make it. Go quiet until it's done, and then move forward with it. So this is what I'm doing with that. And we'll see just how much stuff I can get, and just how comprehensive I can make this. Um, it'll function as a history lesson as much as anything else. I think if I was, 15 now, I might be interested in, what was a 15-year, what was it like to be on the internet 20 years ago when I was the age that I'm at now, if I was that age now. That made sense. That was perfectly rational, logically uh, spotless. Go back and check and you'll see. Anyways, so yeah, that's what I'm doing. What time is it? It is around 8 o'clock. I was up. Well, actually, I should point out, of course, as soon as I said I was going to be up all night, I fell asleep. I got a 23-hour day in yesterday, which is a major improvement over the last little bit. So I'm getting there, but it's still not like a full day. Right? A full normal day for me, like I say, is about 30 hours. So I crashed around 8. I was up around 3. And I'm noticing the last 20 pages of this actually have come in all out of order. So I've got to tend to that. It's going to take a little longer than I want it to. And then I'm up to the vlog editing for the rest of the night. So that's what I'm doing. And I got to get back to it. But I needed to record that. This is an important entry because this is going to define what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. So, yeah. So it's midnight, and I'm not quite done yet. I've got about 8 pages left. Although, what I've realized is that at the end of the year, there in 2011, what I ended up doing was going through the same source over and over again. So I'm going to want to pull all this stuff from the different sources together. So all the Truth Out stuff will go to one post, or like Counterpunch stuff will go to one post, because that's what I was doing as I was catching up for the end of the year. Going over and over the same sources. It looks. I've got a couple pages left, but it's mostly just compiling. So I think I'll probably get done by the end of the night. But I'm stopping to eat because I had to stop to edit, basically. So this process has been so slow. I knew this was going to be so slow, but c'est la vie. I want to finish the rest of that before I get to the rest of the editing. So that's what I'm doing. Stopping to eat. So I guess I'm watching the rest of this. And as predicted, and as was obvious, they brought in the flood of Noah. Are the biblical stories true? Was there really a flood? Did it destroy the earth? Is that why we have rainbows? What's the deal with this? This flood that exists actually in many cultures. That's a good point to bring up. Again, we don't need to talk about God sending a flood to punish people because they're bad. This is crazy talk, right? What we need to talk about is whether or not there is some historical basis in the idea of a destruction event that was widespread. And in fact, this is really interesting. I'll get to the theological aspect in a minute, but the basis of rising sea levels following the Neolithic Revolution actually has a lot of relevance to us in our time period, because that is global warming. So we know that what happened, a little more than 10,000 years ago, around the area of, Turkey and Syria, was that people started domesticating animals
and started making domesticating plants as well. I believe the plants were first actually. Um, and the process of that led to settled civilization, cities, and all these sorts of things. Um, it is not thought that there were cities before agriculture, and that's where a lot of these. I've watched a number of these, as you can probably guess. Again, not because I think they're of great value historically, but because they're stimulating anyways. And it's maybe a bit of a rest, from watching whatever else I want to watch. It's kind of just light-hearted silliness kind of thing, right? Um, but it is at least whimsical, in the sense of being stimulating in that sense, right? Um, and I mean, we know that when we have domesticated animals, especially cows, um, they produce a lot of greenhouse gases. We also know that living in settled scenarios where we have, you know, we don't want to call them cities exactly, but villages anyways, where we're doing things like chopping down trees, we're modifying irrigation processes. All of those things are going to produce greenhouse gases. And um, according to a very widely accepted theory, when you produce greenhouse gases from whatever source, it doesn't have to be an anthropogenic source, it can be any source at all. Um, if the amount of greenhouse gases increase faster than they can be taken down um, through the various ways that if the outtake, sorry, if the uptake happens at a rate that's faster than the downtake. It's all about rates, right? I mean, there's always carbon coming out, and there's always carbon coming down. It's a question of what the rate is, right? So if the rate is such that there's a net increase in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, then the temperature increases. And if the temperature increases, then we have things like melting ice caps, and we have rising sea levels. Now, did that actually happen? Actually, a lot of people think it did. Well, we know that it did. See, the thing is that um, it's hard to separate the effects of the move into the Neolithic era from the um, receding of the previous ice age because they happen so close together, right? I mean, you're doing things like measuring ice cores, and if there was any gap at all between these things, it was so small. So, the attribution process is hard to do, and um, because the change has so long been associated with this shift from an ice age to a well, we're in an interglacial technically, from an active glacial period to an interglacial period. It's just not um, thought of by that many people that are working in the field, except for the people that are actually specifically focusing on that. And there have been people that are specifically focused on it, and they have concluded this. Um, that is exactly what happened. So, why did God flood the earth? Well, maybe God didn't flood the earth. Maybe farming had a consequence, and that consequence was rising sea levels, and maybe in our earlier stage we lost a couple cities. Um, Now, you have to be careful with the time frames with this. Like, we're not going too far back in the past, right? We've got to be, on this side of 15,000 years, anyways. Um, we got a pretty good idea about when we, domesticated animals and plants, and we got a pretty good idea about when these floods happened, and they do seem to align fairly well. Um, you got to watch a lot of these um, programs will um, present data to you that doesn't fit into that um, idea, and invariably, when you actually look into it, you figure out that it's not that this is a counterexample. It's that there's some specious reasoning, or they're just making shit up half the time. Um, Again, this is very lighthearted viewing, right? You don't really want to take any of this seriously. But did these floods happen? They probably did. And in fact, we can probably explain them as a consequence of the way that we change the atmosphere, which is very curious when you do look at the theological aspect of it, because according to the ancient stories, and I mean, who can blame these people for coming up with stories like this, right? I mean, like, they're dealing with massive floods. They don't know why is this happening. They don't realize that it's because like their cows are farting, right? Um, but I mean, it would be reasonable for them to come up with a hypothesis that there's some force that's punishing them for something, right? Um, it seems ridiculous to us, but we're a little bit we have a better understanding of the things around us than they did, right? Um, so, I mean, according to their stories, and this is most of us know it primarily through the Judaic version of it, but I mean, it's just a one. It's well understood. There's no hypothesis here. It's perfectly well understood that the version in the Bible comes from an earlier Sumerian or otherwise Near Eastern source, whatever Sumerian even means, right? Um, Sumerians were some kind of like Russians or something. We don't really know exactly, but we know that there was an sorry, almost an Aleph. Talking about the Judaic sources, I want to say Alpha right now, even though they're really the same thing. We know that there was an Alpha source to that, and that particular story there is much older than the Hebrew scriptures. We know that there are similar stories in other cultures all around the world, though. It's not just about Noah and his ark, and the 2x2s and the whole thing, right? It's actually an idea that is seen in many cultures, and I mean, it seems to be independent verification. I mean, one of the arguments against God is, well, why are all the gods different? Well, if you take a story and it's all the same, well, then maybe there's something to it, right? Um, and I mean, there's positive evidence as well. It's not just not just implicit reasoning. We can see that sea levels did rise during this period. Although you're probably wasting your time if you're looking for a physical ark, of course. Um, but their reasoning, at least in the Judaic story, is that God was punishing them. And most interestingly, is that God promised that He wouldn't do that again. And supposedly that is why we have rainbows. Is as the promise of us never being flooded again. And yet, we do appear to be being flooded again. Perhaps for the same reason. I think that is a very strong argument. Um, if if you needed another argument, or you needed a stronger argument, I think it's a very strong argument against, the Judeo-Christian concept of God. Um, and I've also long suspected that it's the actual reason why we have so many skeptics that just won't accept what science is telling us plainly and clearly, because God promised. And that's a real. I mean, you're not just asking somebody to accept the results of some findings, right? You do your tests, you do your measurements, you find your statistical correlations, and you make your models, and it seems all very sterile, and who's going to argue with that? But if you're coming at it from this perspective of no flooding, because God said so, then you're not just asking them to accept, the evidence, as it exists empirically. You're asking them to reject their faith. And I think really grasping that and coming to terms with that and realizing that is explanatory, and should probably really cause you to fear for the future. Um, if I think we've probably all had a debate about religion, one way or the other, whatever it is we believe, or at least experienced a debate, like watched it kind of thing. We've all engaged in some way or another with a debate with religion, and we know this doesn't like we don't change people's minds on this. And thus, if we have to convince a substantial number of not just Christians but Jews and Muslims to reject the central aspect. I mean, this is a covenant. In fact, it was the first covenant. And if you know a little bit about how these traditions work, these covenants are big deals. Okay, it's not just like something God said in passing. No, this is a covenant. Some examples of other covenants: the Jesus thing, the dying for the sins, that's a covenant. The Abraham thing, it's a covenant. Like these are, it's what they're the plot lines in the Bible. It's what it's all about. Is these are where the covenants are, and these are the you can almost see, you can think of them like social contracts. I think that's maybe a good way to think of it. Is that God made a social contract with us that He wouldn't do this. So, like, how do you convince all of these religious people that their social contract with God is invalid? And like, can you get to the point where you realize you have to do that? It's not as simple as saying, look, this is the data, because it's what the covenant does, right? So it's all very intriguing if you put it in a proper context like this. Now I'm going to watch the rest of this, and it's no doubt going to be nonsense. It's going to try to convince me that, I just hope it doesn't actually try to find the ark. That's when I skip the video. I don't mind talking about, was there a flood? Because, like I say, there probably was. Um, uh, it's an interesting anthropological delve. To look at, the religious aspect of it as well. But once you actually start looking for pieces of wood, then you lose me. That's when you've lost the plot. I know it seems like I've lost the plot, but no. Just let's just not do that. But yeah, that's what I wanted to get out about this. And I'm gonna finish my smoothie. Actually, I should check my render. It's late tonight because it took a lot longer to do everything. I'm just running late in general, so it'll be up soon though. So I should check that first.